jet lag, you're beating space sickness. It's very, didn't know that. Anyway, thanks for that. Nadia Sharbi in the newsroom. It's time for The World This Week. 7 days, 4 Paris-based correspondents, 1 hour with us. Paul Taylor, he's the Europe editor of the Reuters news agency. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm okay. Joining us as well, Craig Copetas, correspondent-at-large for Quartz and The Atlantic. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Welcome as well to Michael Kirtley, freelance journalist and documentary filmmaker, and France 24 international affairs editor Virginie Herz. The World This Week, where you can always join the conversation, and you have on Facebook and on Twitter our hashtag TWTW. It's back to the drawing board for Italy. The president is left looking for a new solution after the center-left leader Pierluigi Bersani admitted he was at an impasse to build a coalition that can muster votes in both the House and the Senate. Some, like the newspaper of Silvio Berlusconi's brother, see this as a good news story. Ciao, ciao, Bersani, the headline there. Others are fretting over a stalemate that's lasted since last month's snap election. In a front-page editorial in Corriere della Sera, Michele Enis writes, the seed of madness has taken root in our public life. Madness, a recurring theme in Italy, as witnessed in Bersani's final plea on Wednesday to Beppe Grillo's anti-establishment five-star movement, which a plea that was streamed over the internet, a sit-down, as you're about to see, that did not go very well.
Just to be clear, when I hear that you won't vote for me, even if I get down on my knees, believe me, only an insane person could have a burning desire to govern right now. This has to be clear. I'm ready to take a huge responsibility. But I would ask everyone to help a little bit. That's it.
And despite that plea, Paul Taylor, Beppe Grillo's party still said no.
Yeah, they seem to want to blow up the system, and they seem to think that they found the lever to do so by simply sitting it out and letting one party after another fail to form a government, and then they will force another election, and they presumably hope that using the same tactics, the same internet insurgency, the sort of grassroots campaign, they will be able to prevail.
But can there be a snap election? I know that the outgoing president, his mandate ends in May, and under the Constitution, he's not allowed to dissolve Parliament in the last 6 months of his mandate.
No, so it won't be snap. It'll probably be sometime later in the year, and in the meantime, you'll get another of these Italian, probably caretaker governments run by somebody who won't be Mario Monti, but will be similar to Mario Monti, and that will do a minimum amount of stuff. But the question is whether the Italian public, faced with this deadlock, will reward Beppe Grillo for standing up to the old Tammany Hall politicians, or will punish him for preventing them from making the country ungovernable. And we don't know the answer to that, and we won't know it until later this year. And in the meantime, one can imagine that the financial markets, which have sort of slept through this pretty much so far, may end their siesta.
And they may end their siesta. Craig Copetas, we've got the Easter weekend. Next Tuesday, could the markets wake up and say this is out of control?
I think they're going to give Italy a little more time, because don't forget, Italy is a nation whose history is best defined by failed governments. It's always been chaotic. It's just now a lot of more people are paying attention to it. There have never been any serious leaders in Italy. Why Italy is where it is now. What do you have? You got a guy called Luigi and a clown trying to broker a deal. Everyone knew going into this is not going to work. But you know, in a democracy, you get what you vote for.
Not going to work, but supporters of Pierluigi Bersani are saying, hang on a second, we cut and paste 6 of Beppe Grillo's proposals into our platform, and they still won't come on board. What's it going to take?
Well, I don't know. I have no answer to that. I just think that this Italy failed government story inspires me. It looks like commedia dell'arte. It's just understandable how and why Italians don't think about just changing the constitution and changing the political system so that they don't face this ongoing problem to form a government.
Yeah, well, I think it's a much more fundamental problem that we're seeing all throughout Europe. People are fed up. People are tired. People, particularly young people, they don't see any future. And and what I've seen on the streets around Europe is that no one has the energy.
But Craig, to get back to Paul's point, here, okay, you've got this anti-establishment party that's ruffling the system, the third force, if you will, and guy's trying to form a coalition and says, all right, let's take on board some of what you're saying. Now, come on, let's govern the country.
But you said it yourself. You know, he's an anarchist. Anarchists are there to create agitprop, to throw a wrench into the machine, and the Italian electorate gave Grillo that wrench and said, go ahead and throw it. But I don't think the Italian public really fully grasps the chaos that this fellow is going to cause.
So if there is a snap election, Michael Kirtley, what happens then?
I think Grillo gains more if there's a snap election, in my opinion. I mean, I think right now Italy has a long history of these kind of populists that could have gained power, gained interest inside. I mean, going back to the fascists, for example. I mean, I think that there's a situation in Italy today that may not be the same as it was before. We look at Italy that over the past decade or two, and we see a lot of chaos, and we see always something good, more or less, happening afterwards. Right now, you've got the Euro crisis that's looming. You've got Cyprus that's going through. I think that there's going to be an awakening inside of Italy that you see right now, represented by Beppe Grillo, and that awakening is that somehow or another this system has to change. And of course, in the future we may see that system won't change so rapidly, but I don't think you're going to stop the force of the young people and the force of the people that see a difference, awakening inside Italy, and you're going to see some change, in my opinion.
Of course, if Grillo is not biting when it comes to taking part in governing the country, there's always one familiar face that is ready to play ball.
Our position has not changed. We expressed it with absolute clarity to the President. We were and still are available to support a coalition government with the Democratic Party, the People of Freedom, the Northern League, and Civic Choice.
Silvio Berlusconi's party and also the Northern League both saying, look, whatever we do, let's get politicians in. Let's not do what you were describing at the outset and bring in more technocrats.
Well, I think that the one thing that the parties have the other parties have understood, the left and Grillo's party have understood, that Berlusconi is sort of toxic, and that if you touch him, you die. And therefore, they would rather see deadlock and go back to elections in the hope that Anno Domini will eventually deal with Berlusconi if the judges can't, rather than get into bed with him politically, which will be the kiss of death, I think, for either the Democrats or for Grillo's people. So, but I mean, I agree with Craig that clearly what this reflects is that there is an anger on the streets of Southern Europe in particular about unemployment, about austerity, about recession, a sense of injustice, and that this will boil over and will explode in some way. What it might do in Italy would be to sweep away the older generation of politicians and bring in some new faces, both on the left, where you've got Renzi, the mayor of Florence, who's waiting.
He's not even 40 years old yet.
Right. And on the right, where there are some young politicians who've grown up under Berlusconi's wing and who are waiting, perhaps rather impatiently, to fly. But for the moment, it may take a period or another period of technocracy, possibly with a reform of the electoral system if they can get it through. And then a new election, preferably, I would think all Italians would prefer, or many Italians would prefer, under a new system.
Under a new system. We'll see if it happens. Italy in the throes of its longest recession since the Second World War. Now, you might say you can resume your regularly scheduled euro crisis. For the past 2 weeks, it was rudely interrupted by the banking bailout in Cyprus, an island nation that weighs 0.2% of the eurozone. Banks reopened Thursday, 13 days after an initial deal that would have taxed all depositors at the source, one that sparked outrage and worry across the continent. Under the revised plan, no tax on savers with less than 100,000 euros in the bank, but a limit on withdrawals. And we're seeing at this point that those limits are being quietly, some of them are starting to be lifted, but there are controls on how much money you can take out of the bank and out of the country, Craig Copetas. At this point, there hasn't been a run on the banks.
Well, as Paul mentioned before we went on air, and he's absolutely right, credit where credit is due, in the electronic age, you don't see bank runs in a bank. They're done electronically. And that is the core of this. What's happened in Cyprus, the Cyprus story is a hydra. It has so many tentacles, and each one of them is nasty, and it's going to hurt you. So many interesting things to discuss and parse on this. What I found, for me, the most interesting thing, this was the best thing that could have ever happened to the U.S. economy.
Why to the U.S. economy?
Well, because what you're seeing is capital flows to safe countries, and capital is safe in the United States. And I'm hearing that you're seeing capital flows from other European countries when, what's his name in the Netherlands stands up and says, we can do this in Italy and we can do this in Spain. Well, anyone there with any money is going to move it out. Now, the other thing that you need to know is that what happened in Cyprus, the word had gotten out to many of the Russian depositors prior to this happening. So there was, who knows how much, it's impossible to track. So a lot of that money left. And the bottom line, the proverbial bottom line here, is you have quite a few middle-class Cypriots who are going to be facing the next 10 to 15 years of a sheer nightmare, and perhaps that's the worst tentacle of this entire hydra.
Now, you mentioned what's his name. We're going to talk about what's his name now. It's just so you know, the previous chair of the Eurogroup served for 8 years. It was a record. Bets are open as to how long what's his name, Jeroen Dijsselbloem, will last after he scared the markets not once but twice. Now, early Monday, after the revised deal had been inked, journalists from the Reuters news agency and the Financial Times asked the 46-year-old Dijsselbloem, who's also the Dutch finance minister, what the new approach meant for Eurozone countries with even higher leverage banking sectors, such as Luxembourg, Malta, and countries with banking problems, such as Slovenia. Well, he answered, it means deal with it before you get in trouble. Strengthen your banks, fix your balance sheets, and realize that if a bank gets in trouble, the response will no longer automatically be that we'll come and take away your problems. You deal with them. Markets tumbled after reading this. Many countries irate, most notably the Germans, according to the press. So quickly, Dijsselbloem turns to Twitter for damage control. Cyprus-specific case. Programs tailor-made to situation. No models or templates used.
As General Zia-ul-Haq used to say in Pakistan, cancel my previous announcement. Yeah, the matter did not appear to him as it appeared to have appeared to him earlier in the day. But I think that the likelihood is that the minister spoke the truth, but that it's a truth that is very unpopular around Southern Europe in particular. The Germans, I think, agree with him. They just wish he wouldn't say it so loud and so bluntly in that very Dutch way. And he's become nicknamed Dijsselbloemer or
What's his name?
Blooper or Dijsselboerd in French. I saw because he seems to have put his foot in his mouth.
You were saying he got crucified for telling the truth. That's certainly what the financial blogger for Slate says. Matt Iglesias writing, the Dijsselbloem freakout occurred because the underlying financial problems are still there. In a happy world of well-capitalized banks, everyone could have looked at his original statement and said, oh well, no problem, Cyprus is nuts, but the banks here are well-regulated and well-capitalized. but nobody believes that.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, look, the thing here that I would ask, Herr, what's his name? The question is, what is it, Paul? The Cyprus's banks were what?
Seven times.
7 to 8 times.
7 to 8 times bigger.
Right.
Are German troops gathering on the frontier of Luxembourg, where it's 24 times?
Yeah.
What about Bermuda? Is the European Union Navy going to blockade Bermuda?
I was going to say, what makes you think that people are going to put their money in American banks? Aren't they going to put them in these offshore places?
No, I think no, because even these offshores are under threat. And look, let me tell you about money. They were paying what, 4.2% maybe in Cyprus on deposits?
They were paying between 6 and 7%.
6 and 7, okay. So if you're going to be getting 6 and 7 in a risk area, believe me, getting 1 or 1.1% in the U.S. is a deal, because the Americans are going to come in.
The extraordinary thing that people are now buying German bonds, even though German bonds pay kind of interest that's below the rate of inflation. So essentially you're losing money. And people are no longer talking about return on investment, they're talking about return of investment. It's just having somebody hold your money for you and being sure you'll get it back at the end.
Michael Kirtley?
Well, I keep going back to this whole thing in Cyprus as we're looking at it in one of two different ways. We're looking at it from how we analyze it as you have today in terms of the macro situation and how it affects Europe, but there's also people involved there. And I think about what would it be like here if the BNP, which is my bank, had that particular situation going on. And I was thinking, can I even take out my money, or will I ever have my money there? And in that regard, I think that the Cypriots are acting pretty civilized, in a pretty civilized manner in dealing with this. I cannot possibly imagine the French dealing with a similar situation without throwing a lot of stones.
And it's food for thought, certainly, and it's a story we'll continue to cover. Stay with us. The World This Week continues when we come back, and we'll tell you about why a 17-year-old is worth $30 million to Yahoo.